My sister Kayla tapped her fork against her wine glass. The table went quiet. She placed her free hand on her stomach, looked around at all of us, and smiled, the way she always smiled. Like she was doing us a favor by existing. "Number 10, she announced, "due in June." My mother screamed. Actual screaming. Brenda, 61 years old, shot out of her chair and clapped her hands together like a child at a birthday party. "Another grandbaby! We'll do it properly this time. A huge shower, maybe the country club." She turned to me. "Elena, you'll help fund it, of course. You're the rich aunt." I looked down at my plate. The pot roast I'd cooked, the table I'd set, the 9 children I'd put to bed upstairs before coming down for dinner. 9, and she wanted 10. "Are you serious?" I said. "She doesn't take care of the ones she has." What happened next changed everything. But to understand that night, you need to go back 5 years, to the baby with one bare foot. And the mistake of saying yes. 5 years before that dinner, my sister Kayla knocked on my door at 2 a.m. She was holding a baby I'd never met. His name was Marcus. He was 4 months old, and his left sock was missing. That's the detail I remember most, not the mascara streaked down Kayla's face, not the smell of cheap wine on her breath, but that tiny bare foot curled against the November cold. "Just for the weekend," she said. "I just need to get back on my feet." I was 34. I managed a marketing team for a mid-sized firm downtown. I woke at 5:15 every morning, ran 3 miles before sunrise, and had my desk organized by color-coded tabs. My apartment was clean. My life was structured. I didn't have children, not by choice. 2 years earlier, a doctor had sat across from me in an office that smelled like antiseptic and pity and told me my body had made that decision for me. Endometriosis, a hysterectomy at 32. I walked to my car afterward, sat in the driver's seat for 11 minutes, and then drove to work. I didn't take the day off. There was a campaign launch that Thursday. So when Kayla stood at my door with Marcus and his one bare foot, something in my chest unlocked. Not joy, exactly. More like recognition. Like finding a use for a room I'd kept empty. "Come in," I said. The weekend became 2 weeks. 2 weeks became a month. Then Kayla showed up again, this time with Destiny, 7 months old, wrapped in a blanket that smelled like cigarette smoke. Mom said you'd be fine with it. My mother, Brenda, lived 14 minutes away. She had a 4-bedroom house. She had a husband named Gary with a pension. She had time, space, and money. But Brenda didn't take the babies. Brenda sent them to me. By the end of the first year, I had 4 children in a 2-bedroom apartment, and I'd moved my home office into the hallway closet. They came in like seasons after that, each one with a name I would memorize, a face I would learn, a fear I would stay up learning how to calm. Mia, 10, the oldest, responsible beyond her years in the way only children who've been let down by adults can be. Liam, 8, quiet, read everything he could get his hands on. Noah, 7, the peacemaker, always the first to say sorry, even when he wasn't wrong. Ava and Zoe, 6, twins, fought over the blue cup every single morning for 3 years. Ethan, 5, fearless, had never once walked where he could run. Lucas, 4, barely spoke above a whisper, but when he did, everyone listened. Mason, 2, toddled everywhere I went like a small, unsteady shadow. And Harper, 9 months, the baby, always in someone's arms because she cried when she wasn't. 9 children, different fathers, none of them Kayla's priority. By year 2, I had moved into the garage apartment behind my mother's house because it was more convenient for the kids. My running shoes collected dust by the door. My color-coded tabs were replaced by pediatrician schedules and formula charts. I calculated it once, on a Tuesday night while filling out school enrollment forms for 3 children simultaneously, 5 years, 9 children, $62,400 a year in direct expenses, no reimbursement, no tax credit, no thank you card. $312,000. That's what my love was worth, converted to receipts. My mother bought Kayla a used Honda that Christmas. She bought me a candle, lavender scented. For relaxation, the card said. I put it on the shelf next to the 7 other candles she'd given me over the years. I didn't light any of them. My mother called every Sunday, not to ask if I needed help, to ask if the children were eating enough vegetables. "You're doing such a wonderful job, Elena," she'd say, and I'd feel that warmth, and I'd mistake it for love. My mother hit me on a Wednesday, over a scheduling conflict. Marcus had a dentist appointment at 3:30. Destiny had a parent-teacher conference at 3. I couldn't be in 2 places at once, so I asked Brenda to take Marcus. She said she had a hair appointment. I said, "Mom, I'm asking you to take your grandson to the dentist." She said, "Don't take that tone with me." And she slapped me, open palm, right cheek, in her kitchen with 4 children watching cartoons in the next room. My ear rang for 3 hours, but the sound that stayed with me longer was the silence. The 4 children didn't flinch. They'd heard it before. They just hadn't seen it happen to me. That week, Kayla called. Pregnant again, number 10. I was folding laundry when she told me. 9 small piles on the bed, sorted by child. I had gotten very efficient at folding. You get efficient at things when you do them 1,000 times, for people who never notice. "Mom says you're the best person for it," Kayla said. "She says the kids are happy with you." I looked at the 9 piles of laundry. I looked at the garage walls. I looked at the framed photo on my nightstand. Me at 28, before the hysterectomy, before the babies, before the garage. I was smiling in that photo. Not the efficient smile I wore now. A real one. Something shifted. Not dramatically, not like in the movies. Quieter than that. The sound of a counter that had been ticking for 5 years finally reaching its limit. And stopping. That night at dinner, my mother said the words that changed everything. "If you even think about leaving, I'll call the police. I'll tell them you abandoned 9 children, and they'll believe me, because I'm their grandmother, and you're just the aunt." I didn't argue. I didn't beg. I looked at 9 children sitting around a table I'd set, eating food I'd cooked, in a house where I slept in the garage. I looked at Brenda's face, the absolute confidence that I would fold, because I always had. I walked back to the garage. I sat on the bed. And for the first time in 5 years, I didn't fold the laundry. I packed my bags. I packed at 2 a.m., not for a trip, for a life. I didn't take much. 2 suitcases, my laptop, the folder of financial records I'd been keeping for 3 years, every receipt, every bank transfer, every payment with Brenda's name in the memo and my money in the amount. I'd labeled it tax documents, boring enough that no one had ever opened it. I took the framed photo from my nightstand. Me at 28. Before. I did not take any of the children's things. Their clothes stayed folded in their drawers, their school bags hung on their hooks, their shoes were lined up by the door in 9 pairs, smallest to largest, the way I'd taught them. I looked at those shoes for a long time. Then I turned off the light and walked out the side door. The door didn't slam. It clicked. The kind of sound that only matters to the person making it. Simon was waiting 2 blocks away. Engine running, headlights off. He didn't ask if I was sure. He'd asked 3 weeks ago. I'd answered with silence, and he'd understood that silence was my answer. What Simon didn't know, and what no one knew, was that I'd already found the house. 3 weeks earlier, on my lunch break, I'd driven to Elm Street, a 4-bedroom with south-facing windows and a backyard big enough for 9 children to argue in. I'd called the realtor from a grocery store parking lot, using the phone I'd bought with cash from an account at the branch across town. The deposit was $2,800. I paid it that afternoon. I also had an appointment with Patricia Delgado, a family attorney on West Elm Street, whose retainer was also $2,800 and whose handshake felt like a promise. By 6 a.m., Brenda discovered I was gone. By 6:47, she'd called me 11 times. By 7:15, she called the police. She told them I had stolen property and abandoned 9 children. The officers arrived at Simon's apartment at 8:22 a.m. I sat on the porch with my hands visible. I told them my name, and then I told them the truth. All of it. The 5 years, the 9 children, the $312,000, the garage apartment, the slap, the threat. The folder labeled tax documents, which I had left behind on purpose because I'd made 3 copies, 1 in my suitcase, 1 in Simon's safe, 1 with Patricia Delgado. The officer listening was a woman about my age. Short hair, careful eyes. She wrote everything down. When I finished, she looked at me quietly. "Ma'am," she said, "we're going to need to visit that house." I nodded. I didn't say what I was thinking. I didn't need to. They were already going. Here is what happened at that house, in the order I learned it, which is not the order it happened. Because that's how collapse works. You don't see the building fall, you hear about it later, 1 floor at a time. When officers arrived at Brenda's house, in response to the call Brenda herself had made, they found 9 children, ages 2 through 11. 3 of them were in diapers that hadn't been changed since the night before. Marcus, 11 years old, was making cereal for the younger ones because no adult had come downstairs yet. Kayla was upstairs, asleep. It was 9:45 in the morning. The officers noted the condition of the house, the empty refrigerator, Kayla's glassy eyes when she finally came downstairs, and the smell of something sharper than wine. Brenda said, "I called you about Elena. She's the one who left." The officer looked at her. "Ma'am, we're not here about Elena anymore." A report was filed. CPS opened an investigation within 72 hours. A social worker named Janet Rivera visited unannounced on a Thursday morning. Brenda met her at the door with a speech she'd clearly rehearsed. "My daughter Elena abandoned these children. I'm doing my best, but I'm 61 years old. I have a bad hip." Janet Rivera interrupted her, politely, firmly. "Ma'am, those aren't her children. Those are your grandchildren. Elena has no legal obligation to them. She never did." I imagine the silence that followed was the loudest thing in that house since I left. CPS required drug screenings for all adults. Brenda passed. Kayla did not. Amphetamines and benzodiazepines. It explained the sleep patterns, the missed mornings, the glassy eyes. It explained why 9 children had learned to make their own breakfast. Why Marcus, at 11, knew how to change a diaper better than most adults. The good mother narrative Brenda had built, the one where Kayla was the natural parent and I was just the helpful aunt, collapsed on a Tuesday afternoon in a CPS office when the test results came back on a single sheet of paper. 2 weeks later, Kayla was arrested. DUI, 11:40 p.m. on a Wednesday. Baby Harper was in the car. Blood alcohol, 0.14. She called Brenda from the police station. Brenda called a lawyer, $4,200. Money she'd never once offered to share with me in 5 years. $4,200 for Kayla's lawyer, 0 for Elena in 5 years. The math hadn't changed, it had just become visible. The family court judge reviewed the file. CPS report, drug test, DUI with an infant, 9 children, a grandmother with no support system, and a history of enabling. The judge removed all 9 children from the household. Temporary foster care, pending further review. Brenda called me that night. First time in 6 weeks. "This is your fault," she said. "If you hadn't left, none of this would have happened." She was right about one thing. If I hadn't left, none of this would have happened. But not the way she meant it. If I hadn't left, 9 children would still be living in a house with an addict and an enabler. The drug use would still be hidden, the neglect invisible. And I would still be in the garage, folding laundry at midnight, mistaking exhaustion for love. I didn't destroy anything. I just stopped holding it together. And everything that was already broken fell. "Would you consider temporary guardianship?" Janet Rivera asked. She was sitting across from me in a county family services conference room. Fake wood table, bad coffee, fluorescent lights that made everyone look slightly ill. "The court has determined the current household is not suitable," she said. "Given your documented history as their primary caretaker for 5 years, you're the first option for kinship placement." Kinship placement. Legal language for the person who was doing this all along. I looked at Simon. He was sitting close enough that our shoulders touched. 3 weeks earlier, when I'd told him about the investigation, he'd asked one question. "How many bedrooms do we need?" Not should we, not can we. How many bedrooms? That's when I knew he understood. "Yes," I said, "I'll take them." Janet nodded. She didn't look surprised. I think she'd known my answer before she asked. The paperwork took 3 days. The move took 1 afternoon. 9 children. Their clothes, their school bags, their shoes, the same 9 pairs I'd lined up by the door the night I left. Smallest to largest. The first night Marcus asked, "Are we staying?" "Yes." "For real?" "For real." He didn't say thank you. He just went to his room, and closed the door, not all the way. 4 inches, the way he'd always needed it. Some things children remember. While I was settling the children into their new home, my mother was making a different kind of plan. Kayla called me from the treatment center 3 weeks after she'd checked in. Her voice was different, stripped of the coached quality. It sounded like her, the real her from before. "Elena, listen to me." Something in her tone stopped me. "I just got a letter from Mom. She's been telling everyone, including people here at the center, that you manipulated the system to steal my children. She says you're an unstable single woman who has no right to raise kids." I stayed quiet. "There's more." Kayla's voice tightened. "She contacted 2 of my exes, the fathers of Ava, Zoe, and Lucas. She's telling them that if they help her get the kids back, she'll make sure they don't have to pay back child support. She's promising them they can just take their biological children and disappear." My blood went cold. "And Elena, she's been calling people from my past, people who are bad news. She's telling them where you live and implying there's something worth stealing in a house where someone just got a settlement." I sat down. "Kayla, why are you telling me this?" "Because I'm done being a coward." Her voice was steadier than I'd ever heard it. "I've been clean for 7 months, and my recovery doesn't mean anything if my children get hurt because I was too selfish to protect them." She arrived 3 days later. The change in her was, I don't have a better word than remarkable. Clear-eyed, focused, and absolutely furious. "Where's Mom?" "Dad moved out. She's alone." "Good," Kayla said, jaw set. "Take the kids to the park. I need you far away when I do this." That afternoon, while I drove Mia and Liam and the twins and all the others to a park 2 towns over, while Ethan ran himself in circles and Lucas found a stick he treated like a treasure, and little Harper fell asleep against my shoulder, Kayla went home. She found Brenda in the kitchen, looking disheveled and bitter. "Kayla!" Mom rushed to hug her. "Sweetheart, you're home. We can fix this whole mess with Elena and get the children back where they belong." "Sit down, Mom." "What?" "Sit down, we need to talk." Brenda sat. She was expecting an ally. Instead, Kayla pulled out a chair and looked her directly in the eyes. "I know what you've been doing, the harassment, the false reports, the people you contacted. I know everything." Mom's face went pale. Sweetheart, I was only trying to—" "Stop talking." Kayla's voice cracked like a whip. "For once in your life, just stop talking and listen to me." Brenda went still. "Those children were dying in my care, not literally, but emotionally. I was killing their spirits with my neglect, and instead of ever, once, telling me the truth, you enabled every single thing I did. You sent my children to live in Elena's garage and told yourself you were helping." "That's not... You want to know what's not right? What's not right is that I brought 9 children into this world and couldn't be bothered to take care of them. What's not right is that Elena spent 5 years raising my children while I was using drugs. And instead of gratitude, instead of one moment of accountability, you're trying to destroy the only person those kids have ever been able to count on." Brenda was crying now, but Kayla wasn't done. "Elena loves my children more than I do." Her voice broke slightly, then steadied. "There, I said it. She loves them more than their own mother loves them, and they are so lucky to have her." She stood up, began to pace. 5 years of suppressed anger finally allowed to move. "You want to know the worst part? You would rather put those children in danger than admit you were wrong. Your pride matters more to you than their safety, and I am done pretending otherwise." Kayla reached into her bag, pulled out a folder, and set it on the table. "These are papers for the termination of your grandparent visitation rights. I'm signing them. Elena is filing them. And you will have no legal standing regarding my children until you've gotten real help and taken real accountability." Brenda stared at the papers. You can't do this. I'm their grandmother. You lost those rights when you chose revenge over their welfare. Kayla picked up her bag. Get therapy. Take responsibility. Maybe someday, if you change. Elena might let you see them, but that's her choice now, not yours. She walked out. Left Brenda sobbing in a kitchen that used to hold 12 people. A woman who had orchestrated every relationship in the family for 40 years, finally, quietly, dethroned. When Kayla picked me up from the park, she looked lighter than I'd ever seen her, like she'd set down something she'd been carrying her whole life. How did it go? It went exactly how it needed to go. She paused. She knows she's lost. That evening, as we put the children to bed, Kayla went to each of them. She knelt to Mia's level. I want you to know that you have the best mom you could ever ask for, and I'm proud of you. She told Liam she was proud of him. She told Ava and Zoe she was sorry she'd missed their games. She held Lucas for a long time without saying anything. And when she got to Harper, 9 months old, already asleep or some, she just stood at the crib, tears moving silently down her face. I don't deserve to be his mother, she whispered, but I'm so grateful that you do. Patricia Delgado earned her retainer. The civil suit was straightforward. 5 years of documented childcare. Every receipt in the tax documents folder, every bank transfer, every payment. The calculation was clear. $62,400 per year times 5 years. $312,000 in direct expenses, conservatively filed at $250,000 to account for items Brenda would argue were gifts. Brenda's lawyer advised her to settle. The evidence wasn't something I'd built against her. It was simply the records I'd kept. Years of receipts no one had asked to see. Bank statements that proved exactly who paid for what. They settled at $200,000. I opened college funds the same afternoon. 10 accounts, 1 for each child, $20,000 each. Not for me, for them. Because what I'd done for 5 years had value, and now there was proof. 2 months after the settlement, Kayla called from the hospital. Her voice was steady. The voice of someone who had practiced being sober long enough that it was starting to feel like her own. It's a boy, she said. Owen, 7 pounds, 4 ounces. He's healthy. I was standing in the kitchen, and I could hear the twins arguing in the next room, and Marcus was practicing piano badly, beautifully, and the house was full of the noise that used to exhaust me and now felt like breathing. Elena, Kayla said, I signed the papers. He's yours, if you'll have him. I drove to the hospital that afternoon. Simon stayed home with the 9. When I walked into the maternity ward, Kayla was sitting up in bed, holding Owen against her chest. She looked tired. She looked clear. She handed him to me without a word, just a nod, the kind that carries more weight than any speech. I held Owen for a long time, warm, impossibly small, smelling like new soap and hospital cotton. His hand curled around my finger the way Marcus's had 10 years ago in a garage apartment that felt like another lifetime. The 9 children came to visit the next day. They stood outside the nursery glass in a row, smallest to largest, the way I taught them to line up their shoes. Marcus pressed his palm flat against the window. He's one of us now, he said, quietly, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. I didn't cry. I just stood there holding a 10th child I hadn't planned for, in a life I hadn't planned for, and felt something I hadn't felt in a very long time. Not recognition, not relief. Completeness. Brenda petitioned for grandparent visitation rights. Her lawyer, the 3rd, because the first 2 had quit, argued that she was a concerned grandmother unfairly separated from her grandchildren. The judge reviewed the file, the CPS report, the drug tests, the police report from the night Brenda called the police on me, the custody transcripts, the settlement, the termination of visitation filed by Kayla. The petition was denied. The judge's exact words, the petitioner's documented pattern of enabling an unsafe environment, combined with her demonstrated lack of accountability, does not support the granting of visitation rights at this time. At this time. Legal language for not now and probably not ever. Gary, who had been quiet through all of it, quiet in the way that men like Gary are always quiet, and had already stopped coming home for dinner, then stopped coming home for weekends, then just receded like a tide, slowly enough that you don't notice until you're standing on dry sand. The house that once held 12 people was empty. No grandchildren fighting over the blue cup, no Kayla sleeping upstairs, no Gary in the recliner, no Elena in the garage, folding laundry at midnight. Just Brenda and a hallway clock from Home Goods, ticking. She called me once, about 4 months after the settlement. I was cooking dinner, pasta with garlic bread, Marcus's favorite, 10 plates on the table, loud, chaotic, full. My phone buzzed. I looked at the screen. Brenda. I set it face down on the counter, and I served dinner. Remember that garage apartment? The concrete walls, the single window, 9 piles of laundry at midnight. A woman who thought if she just worked hard enough, if she just loved hard enough, the people who were supposed to love her back would finally see her. She's in a different house now, a house she chose. She painted the hallway a color called Quiet Sage, a fancy name for green, because she wanted to, and because nobody told her not to. Every morning she wakes at 6:15, makes coffee, the good kind, dark roast, 14 a bag, sits on the back steps for exactly 7 minutes before the chaos starts. 7 minutes of silence that belong entirely to her. She didn't know silence could be a gift until she'd spent 5 years mistaking it for loneliness. Looking back, she learned 3 things. Not the kind of lessons you find in greeting cards. The kind you learn at 2 a.m., sitting on a cold garage floor, wondering how your life became something you didn't recognize. Lesson 1, shared blood is not shared loyalty. Family is a choice that gets made every day by every person in it. Some people choose themselves every single time and call it love. Being in the same house as someone is not the same as being on the same side. Lesson 2, financial independence is the exit door. Every dollar she saved in that account at the branch across town was a brick in a wall, not to keep people out, to keep herself in her own life, on her own terms. If you're in a situation like hers right now, open an account nobody knows about. Put in whatever you can. $10, $20. It doesn't matter how much. What matters is that it exists, and that when the moment comes, and it will come, you have something to stand on that isn't someone else's floor. Lesson 3, silence is not weakness. It is the loudest thing in the room. For 5 years, her family mistook her quiet for compliance. They thought because she didn't argue, she agreed. Because she didn't cry, she wasn't hurting. Because she didn't leave, she couldn't. They were wrong about all of it. The quietest person in the room isn't always the weakest. Sometimes she's the one who's been paying attention. Taking notes, keeping receipts, literal receipts, in a manila folder labeled tax documents, stored in 3 separate locations. Silence is not surrender. Sometimes silence is the sound of someone building a door while everyone else thinks the walls are solid. People ask her if she's angry. She's not. Anger is a fire that keeps you warm while it burns down your house. She let it go. Not because her mother deserved forgiveness, but because she deserved peace. 6 months after she left, she woke up to the sound of 10 people arguing over cereal. Marcus wanted Cheerios. The twins wanted Lucky Charms. Little Mason, who had opinions about everything now, wanted pancakes. Simon was at the stove in a t-shirt that said, "World's okayest cook," flipping pancakes that were slightly burned on one side, and nobody cared. That's the thing about freedom. It doesn't announce itself. It shows up in small moments. The color of a hallway, the right to burn pancakes, a Saturday morning where nobody needs you to be anything other than present. She's not the biological mother of these 10 children, but she's their mom in every way that matters. She wakes up every morning to sticky fingers, noise, and chaos, and she wouldn't trade it for anything. And Kayla? She's clean. She visits twice a week, calls every Sunday. She's been sober long enough now that it's starting to sound like her real voice. Their relationship will never be what it once was, but it's built on honesty, and that turns out to be a stronger foundation. Now let me ask you something, and I mean this genuinely. I think about it more than I'd like to admit. Was she right to leave quietly? Or should she have confronted Brenda, face to face, in front of everyone, and told her exactly what she'd done? Told Kayla, told Gary, told the whole family at that Thanksgiving dinner where they were all sitting around the table she'd set and eating the food she'd cooked, that she was done being invisible? Some days, the silence was her power. Walking away without a word was the strongest thing she'd ever done. Other days, she wonders if she owed it to herself to be loud, to take up space, to let them see exactly who they were losing in the moment they were losing her. I don't know the answer. I'm not sure there is one. But I'd love to know what you think. Quiet exit or loud truth? What would you have done? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one. Because you know what the loudest revenge really is? It's not a courtroom. It's not a settlement check. It's not even a phone call you don't answer. It's a Thursday night, 10 plates on the table, garlic bread in the oven, badly played piano coming from down the hall, and a woman who finally stopped carrying everyone else's weight and discovered she could fly. Until next time.